My name is Yolanda Garcia Gomez, and I'm the DSP coordinator, counselor, and I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm here today to go over disability support program services and how working remotely during the campus closure and while our students are learning remotely, how we can be of help and how we can learn from you and each other to support our students. Teresa?
Hi, good morning. Nice to see some new faces. Welcome. My name is Teresa O'Brien, and I'm one of the counselors for DSPS. Scott, you want to go, yo?
Okay, got it. Again, I don't understand why when I'm speaking, I don't go up there, but if somebody has a tip on that, let me know.
I'm Scott Hamilton. I'm the learning disability specialist for DSPS.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else from DSP here that I didn't see? Okay. We also have a lot of other great people here that I hope will, we have, I noticed Patrick's here from Distance Ed. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. Works a lot with accessibility in our faculty and preparing our students, our environment for access. One of the first things I wanted to share is who we are. What is DSPS, right? I think many of you know we exist on a campus, or you get letters from our program from students who are telling you what their accommodations are. But we are a categorically funded program because we're here to make sure that our college is accessible to all students. So students with limitations, special conditions, disabilities of multiple even disabilities can come to us and make sure that they're getting access through different accommodations and support services. So one of the first things on my slide, and we're going to do this and then go over some common accommodations, focus on a few of them, and then we're going to open up to sharing with everyone about what you're seeing, what are your questions that maybe we didn't address yet. But one of the first things I want to just let you know is the DSP is, it's 100% optional in the sense that students don't have to even come and enroll with us. It benefits them to enroll because we have certified counselors that can look at the medical information or IEP, that information collected from other colleges or high schools or professionals. And we can kind of, we come up with the accommodations. But if a student has a disability and they don't want to come enroll in DSPS, there's nothing really we can do. You as a faculty can say, you know, I don't know what to make sense, because I think a lot of you probably didn't get medical information emailed to you directly, and you don't know what to make of it, how to accommodate them. That's our job to help you. But it is optional. They can go to the ADA officer here at CRC, and that's Dr. Oliveros, our BPSS. So she would be a person that can help provide that for the student if they don't want to come to DSP. But I think the majority of students do come to us to get this. They know that this is a value to them and equals a playing field for them. So our charge is equal access in the educational setting. That's the reason DSP is here. We're here because we want to make sure that the students who have limitations due to their disability have an equal chance of being in this educational setting, participating with individuals who don't have those limitations. So that is why some of them get extra time or notes or ability to audio record you. So there's many reasons, and it's all unique to that individual. Those accommodations have to be reasonable. So they can't be something that really doesn't equal their getting above and beyond services. We want it to be so they get equal access. And so when we really think out these specific accommodations that get sent to you, we've really spoken to the student, gotten a lot of information from them to say, this is extended time they need. And we know that a lot of our students don't even use it full time, but in a test, for example, but they are eligible for this extended time because we have determined that to be a reasonable accommodation. We don't want to provide an accommodation that may alter the fundamental aspects of a course. So if a course requires that a student be able to do something in a limited time, And we think of all this in a CTE often, you know, you need to be able to do a task in a certain time. We're not going to say, oh, give them extra time to do that when it may be a life and death decision for, let's say, an vet tech program for an animal that needs to be taken care of quickly. We want it not to alter anything. That's really fundamental to that course and that learning outcome. So if that's a concern, you can reach out to us. At any point, a faculty member can even appeal the accommodation and raise a question about it. But most people do trust our accommodations, and we are looking at the fact that this isn't high school where people could have a long time to take a test. We do create very reasonable forms of accommodating students in higher education. DSP also requires verification of the disability, so a student needs to provide us with a written documentation of whatever condition they have. And sometimes it's temporary, but most students in DSP have permanent disabilities. They've had it for most of their life or just recently acquired them. So we look over that, and we do keep that in confidential in our office, and now electronically we're maintaining all that information on students. If a student doesn't have documentation and wants to meet with us or really has a question about that, we will meet with our students. We will meet with the student to see if there's something else that they can get us. And there's sometimes visual disabilities that we're able to observe, and so that's in the hands of a certified DSP counselor to determine. Right below here at the end of my slide is just another variety of services and supports about DSPS. When we're focused on counseling, we're technically not supposed to duplicate any services that the college is offering, like tutoring, but we can have some specialized support in study strategies and skills for students. But all our students use all the services on campus and participate in all aspects of the college. We do help students become advocates and understand their disability so they can understand why they need to advocate for things or how to go about doing that. Because a lot of students come from an environment like high school, for example, where maybe they didn't have to advocate, things kind of automatically showed up for them every year that they progressed through high school or elementary. And so here now they're adults, they're to provide you a letter, and they're here to also be able to tell you, hey, I really need this, or I don't, or what do I do? And so we want them to understand so they can advocate for themselves, because when they go out into the work world, they're going to have to learn how to do that in a different way, but similarly as they grow up and progress in their lives. We also help students who are enrolled at CRC determine if they're eligible in regards to having a learning disability, and that's what Scott has. Scott, did you want to share a little bit about that? Because that's one of our supports of what Scott Hamilton, who you met earlier, does. And then we also make materials accessible, but I'll let Scott just a few minutes of that.
Sure. If there's a student who doesn't have some other disability or condition identified already, but they're struggling, having difficulty learning, particularly if it's been long term, if it's not just this semester, or if it's something that's been an issue for them for a long time, then they can see me. I can talk to them. I do an initial like half an hour screening appointment, and then if it's obvious that it's some other cause, then we move a different direction. But if not, then I can do an assessment using standardized testing systems, also a lengthy packet of questions to get background on the person, health history, family history, school history, what areas they think they have difficulties with learning, etc. And they have to complete that, and then they see me again, and I go back through all of it to make sure that there isn't some other explanation, and to get a better idea of where their learning issues might be. And then I do testing sessions, and there is no such thing as a single test to see if somebody has a learning disability. It's a variety of tests and really they're measurements. They're not tests like you can pass or fail them. They're measurements to see how well they process different types of information. So they're usually, I end up doing a couple dozen different subtests looking at how they process information, and then reading, writing, spelling, math, tests like that to get an overall profile, and then see whether it meets the criteria for them to be considered as having a learning disability. And then if so, then I can approve accommodations based on the results that I've found where their limitations are. And if not, then I refer them to, if it doesn't qualify as being a learning disability, then I can refer them to other resources on campus. And I do a fair amount of, because of the assessments, I do a fair amount of kind of personal counseling, because sometimes it's really not, it's more their life. It's not their neurological makeup, but it's issues in their life that are causing learning problems. So, I mean, that's not the main focus of what I do, but I end up doing that because of what I find having so much individual contact with them over a number of weeks and many hours. And if anybody ever has any questions about the process, or whether it seems like a student would be a good referral to me, go ahead and contact me. I was about to say you can even walk them over to my office, but you know, I'm not there. I'm actually 150 miles away from there. So email me.
Yes. And we'll share a little more too of how to, at the end, maybe a little bit of how you can refer students to us as well. That's really important. Thank you, Scott. So another core part is we have students who need things in different formats. So we make some of the materials for our DSP students accessible to them. They have that as an accommodation to receive alternate media. Here are some common accommodations that show up on a letter, at least while we're going online. There's a lot more than this. And you may even get a letter that might still have some of those classroom accommodations, so you can kind of ignore them. For example, if you do get a letter that says a furniture or something like that, it doesn't apply to you because obviously you're online, that might just show up. But the majority of them that you should be seeing on the letter is, if they have extended time, these are if they have them, is the time for tests. And this is also true of quizzes. So this is anything that's timed, you want extended on Canvas. But if you do obviously have take-home exams, you're giving them, then take-home exams or projects, things like that, obviously you don't need to, those aren't timed exams or quizzes. So anytime you're evaluating, setting a time there, you want to extend that. Note taking is still happening in live lectures. So students are listening, like someone might be listening to me right now, I'm lecturing. Someone could be taking notes for a student who has a hard time taking notes while they're listening to me. Audio recording, I've been hearing a lot of faculty recording their Zoom sessions, which is awesome, because then they can edit those captions and then post them right on Canvas. So access to technologies, that's become quite an interesting thing, because our students would come into the DSP assistive technology lab and they would be able to get to a CCTV. That's a device that you can enlarge anything you put under it. It can even has a speech component. It can read it. So a person with low vision could access that in our lab. Well, now we're all remote. This has really changed things for our students. And that's why we're seeing a drop in some of our students who are really struggling how to navigate online. And as they slowly take a class, maybe instead of multiple classes, they may be finding out that there's other ways on Canvas to do some of these things that they're used to doing. But we do have some technologies, document readers. Students have technology on their computer that they can use, or we can share with them so that they get access, okay? But it has limited some of our physical devices that we have on campus. Again, our alt media specialists, you'll put textbooks and materials in Braille, large print, e-text, which I didn't list on there, that's an electronic version of a book, audio, And some things are available through Learning Ally, which is a partner of DSPS in providing audiobooks. And then another one that's been very common is an American Sign Language interpreter being in the class, a team in the course that switch off and on during a class session you may have. And those are the ones we've been working really hard to get those ready to go on day one right now. I also wanted to just put a little note here that accommodations can change at any time. Many of our students who are remote right now may be finding they can't take as many classes, or they need that time, may need to be looked at again, or something else, some other way that we can put that on a letter and let you know there's something else going on now. But most of our students are maintaining some of these accommodations, but there could be some changes or some things that we hadn't thought of. So be open for that. And of course, you know that a letter can come at any time from a student to you. Are there any things on chat, Teresa, that we might want to respond before we move forward?
I'm just seeing this one. How often do students visit the DSPS office to update or change accommodations? Not really often. Typically that happens when a student is struggling. So for example, perhaps they have extra time on exams. We often start with time and a half, so an extra half an hour for an hour, and they're still not having enough time to finish a test. They're racing toward the end. So they'll come in and discuss that with us. And it could be that we need to work with them on some test taking strategies. It could be that double time would actually be more appropriate. So it doesn't tend to be often, and it comes up when students are still having some serious difficulties despite their the accommodation, so we might need to make an adjustment. Or if we maybe the student would do really well with note taking, it's not working really well, maybe we adjust and go to audio recording to see if that can work better for them. So does that make sense? Did that answer the question well?
Okay. Here are some quick tips that, let's see if you can, here's some tips that I thought of. The syllabus. I know many of you have worked already on your syllabus, which is awesome, and you're going to be providing that. I want to make sure, if you haven't already, that you include a disability statement. And in that statement, update it. We're not at DS 104, as you know, as we're working remotely. Make sure you include our phone number. Our phone number is still being answered by our staff. They're answering every day. Right now, we're flooded with calls and we're responding. Another way a student can reach us is they can go on the website. You can also post our website. So that'd be crclosrios.edu/DSPS. That's another way you can kind of let them know to get to us. On there is the application. How to make an appointment is on there. So they click on how to make, would like to make an appointment, and they can make an appointment with Scott Hamilton, who's our LD specialist, with like a Teresa or another counselor in DSPS, or a media person. So there's other ways they can communicate if they don't get on the phone. And of course, our emails. You don't want to give an email of a particular person on your disability statement, but we do have a CRC DSP email that's generic. That's really heavily being used now just to receive all those appointment requests. We also asked that.
We had a question on the chat. Are the procedures and the policies of DSPS the same for disabled students at all of the colleges under district? So, yes and no. All of the campuses require the same requirement of having documentation. So student must present documentation, student must have an intake. And this is a great question, especially because so many students are really taking advantage of the remote environment and saying, hey, that class I need is at ARC or Folsom Lake. They're attending all the campuses. What is awful is that they have to meet with DSPS on each campus to receive accommodations at that campus. Despite Scott Hamilton's best efforts, to consolidate that and remove that barrier for students. Unfortunately, that's what it is. So where we all have the same must have an intake, must have documentation, you might be having students who are receiving DSPS at ARC. They're taking your class here at CRC. They will need to meet with us for us to present, give them that letter of accommodation or accommodate them in your class. In terms of policies in the, what we use to consider an accommodation to be reasonable, our professional ethics and values and standards, that is, you know, across the board the same. So did that answer the question, or does anyone have a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. I just want you to know, as coordinators too, we're meeting monthly, and we're all working. We're at different levels. Luckily we were so ready to. We were the college that had the online application ready before March 13th or whatever arrived, because we were already collecting electronic applications, which was really good for us to be online and be able to pull a year's worth of applications that we already collected. So other colleges have moved forward to do a lot of things electronically like we have, and we've been kind of a model for that. But one area we're still working on is a common place for this, so that students don't have to go and reapply to all these other campuses. Going back to my tips, hopefully that's answered everything, is that we set up a time, we're asking that if you could set up a time to meet with the student. When we give them the letter, we email them the letter, and we ask them to meet with you, to not just send you a letter blankly, but to actually engage in. I'd like to set up some time to go over it. That way, if there's any questions, you're gonna need some of their support and remembering to extend the time. Anything like that, you guys are on the same page on everything. If there's something in there you have questions about, the student thinks you're going to give them this accommodation, but you're not, clear it all up, because there might be some things on there like furniture or preferred seating. We know that's not applicable, and we're trying to not make sure that's in your letter. But if it's there, you know, I don't think the student will be confused. But if there's anything in there you still need to work out about the time or the quizzes, it's good to do it at the front end. And if there's any concerns that come out of it, you've reached out to the student, try to resolve them, or with us. Many times you just address their needs and everything works out. We don't hear from the student, but we do get some students, and unfortunately it's towards the end of the semester, they felt that something wasn't going right, and we asked, did you meet with the instructor? Yes, I tried to work it out, but I also feel free to reach out to me or to the DSP, and they'll connect me to me or a counselor that can support the student and yourself on how to address any discrepancies or understanding on the letters. But if you interact with them, that's really positive. Go on, Teresa.
And then Marcus, hi, thank you for this question. It's a good follow-up to what we were discussing before in terms of having students who may be approved for DSPS at other campuses taking your course. The question is, would it be appropriate for us to make accommodations if a student sends us a letter from another college's DSPS? So it's a nuanced answer. So yes, I mean, that's up to you. The student has requested an accommodation, you can. That's your call. Where it can be complicated for the student is if you say yes, but your colleague says no. Right, so that yes could give them the idea that it's cool, and then one of your colleagues is going to say absolutely not, you have to go through CRC DSPS. It can be confusing for the student. What I tend to recommend is you really need to go see our DSPS, but the test is in 2 days. I'm going to accommodate this test, you know, in 2 days, but really it's for your benefit to get the letters from us, because we first is to do no harm, right? But yeah, that's a great question, and I think you know what you're comfortable with, but that's what I would recommend.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Teresa. And I also think that the processes at our campus are a little different. So a student might think they have to do what ARC asks And our ARC has a process with the faculty that's different. They actually they used to ask the letter be returned to them, fill out this blue form, little processes that these colleges have that we do not have. We don't have the students sign the letter anymore, so we've removed some barriers from letter, right? And now we just initial it and send it to, we initial. So everyone's got a little different process with the letters, and also what they offer for testing might be different staffing levels, different things that they do. So it's good to be connected with the letter, to be connected with us, to have them come see us. Going back to the one last tip, and actually it's really important, it's course content. It must be accessible. Oops, sorry about that. It must be accessible by a document reader, screen reading software. It needs to be friendly to low vision students who maybe need contrasting colors. Anything is audio should be captioned, or have the ability to turn on captions, and the captions are easy to read and reflect what's being said orally. So all these are for our different students with a variety of disabilities. We definitely give faculty heads up about a student that is going to have an interpreter, that all their materials be captioned, but it can be anybody showing up on your first day of class that needs some of this. A document reader, very important. The student that your materials can be read by a document reader. That's that reads the text. Everything in front of me can be read with this reader, because that person could have a reading discrepancy in that dyslexia, or they just need to reread it again and again, and they want it to be accessible. A screen reading reads the navigation for a student who has a limited version or no vision. So that's really important. You could have someone and they don't know about DSP yet. They haven't. You're the person that's going to say, go to DSPS, I'll help you while I can, but you need to go to DSPS because there'll be other services you can get. A lot of students will show up in your classroom for the first time and not know about DSPS. So it's really important that your class be set to go. And I know Patrick's in the house, and I just say thank you, Patrick, for all you're doing to support our faculty who's working tirelessly over the summer to have our courses ready to go for our students. Did you want to share anything?
Well, and actually there is a question in the chat, and I think because I was going to call on Patrick, some expertise to maybe help with this one, or help explain this one. The question from Kevin is, will you add the closed caption for the content with the video, or do the professors need to add them by themselves? And I believe the answer is that the professors do need to add the captions, and maybe Patrick, if you want to let them know how we can support them in doing that?
Yeah, there's really a couple different ways on how we can support the captioning of all of the videos inside of Canvas. Los Rios provides a tool called Canvas Studio, which is our Canvas-centric video recording and hosting platform, and that includes auto captioning and the ability to go in and edit all of those auto captionings after the fact. In addition, all of our web technology supports embedding videos from other video hosts. So I'm a big fan of YouTube. YouTube has a great auto captioning system that can integrate just quite wonderfully right into Canvas and all of our other learning management systems. So YouTube and Canvas Studio are probably the ones that I direct almost everyone towards, because the auto captioning system is going to do the lion's share of the work for you, and they also allow us to go back in and edit those captions after the fact. The problems really start to bubble to the surface when we're using videos that are not owned by us. There's a lot of fantastic learning resources out on the web that the professor didn't necessarily create, and now we're kind of in no man's land. Some of those are captioned, some of those are not. If you're using an external learning resource that's not captioned, oftentimes you can contact the creator and request that the auto captions be created, or when in the case of YouTube, you can ask them very gently if they will allow for community contributions to their captions, and then we can send in an external service and caption those videos for them. But as far as all the kind of the first party videos that we create, we have Canvas Studio and YouTube, and even Zoom. Zoom will do captioning now for us after the fact. Those are all really great resources to get Oh, and one final thing is 3C Media. And 3C Media is a great service that the state chancellor provides to us. You can send their videos away. The only kind of bummer about 3C Media is that the processing time for all the captions can be kind of long, 3-4 days at times. I've even heard it can be a couple weeks because you're getting them hand captioned. They're the best captioning service out there for free. They're going to be perfect, but you have to wait for it. YouTube and Canvas Studio, within about 20 or 30 minutes, depending on the load of all of the servers, you'll get your captions back.
Great. And as we said earlier, you know, we're going to put, thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much for how you're helping everybody and supporting our students, and thank you for that information. We will be sending out an email with a PowerPoint, and what I'm thinking is maybe I could work with you, Patrick, in getting some of those links, and we can put them directly in that email to kind of try to facilitate you guys having access to that. So it's kind of not that anybody wants one more email, but it could sort of be in one spot for you.
And Marcus just put in the 3C Media link in the chat.
Okay, thank you. You've used that before, I'm gonna guess. Do you want to kind of share, is that your preferred, is that kind of the go-to for you? You found it the easiest, or why you prefer that?
It used to be the only thing available before the auto captioning solutions that Patrick mentioned became available. Yes, there are the delays, especially at the beginning of the semester, and Patrick was right on after 2 weeks at times. But they do a really good job. You have the opportunity to supply them with some special terms as part of the submission. And then you can actually download both the video files and the captioning files if you say want to move it to YouTube or to another medium later. So very, very well done. But yeah, the time delay is a factor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to pass this on to Teresa.
Okay. So note taking during live Zoom lectures. So what I think we learned over the summer and in spring is if a student has 10 different classes, there's likely 10 different ways their professors are handling the lectures, the Zoom, and the notes. So for a lot of students, where in the classroom, they needed the support of the note taker. For many students in this remote environment with the Zoom and the recording and their ability to kind of watch the Zoom over and over again, I found not as many feel the need for that note-taking support in shared notes from a classmate. We have some students, though, where they still would like that kind of hard copy of notes, as if they were sitting in your classroom taking notes, they're watching the live Zoom taking notes. Typically on campus, the student would maybe find a classmate on their own. You know, the person sitting next to them seems pretty nice. They feel, hey, maybe I'll ask this guy. In the remote environment, that's a lot more difficult for a student to do, right? They're just seeing faces or names on Zoom. Could be more difficult for them to reach out to a classmate. So they may be asking you to help them do that. Because you might have a different kind of access to the students to be able to message them. I would hope, and we saw a lot of this in summer, for those doing the live Zoom lectures, the instructors are recording those and having kind of unlimited access for all students by posting those videos on the Canvas page. That to me seems kind of like a best practice that's helping all of your students. And then especially if you can add the captions, it's like having almost transcribed notes or having some notes. Any questions about note-taking during live Zoom lectures? Hopefully that made sense. It's such an odd experience for me. I'm sorry to see all these little thumbnails of people, and it's hard to see faces and see, is everybody like getting this, or am I missing the mark?
Now you know what us teachers feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange, yeah, I didn't realize how much, well, I guess I did as a counselor, we rely a lot on body language and nonverbal, communication, and just how the student can shift in their seat. And even after 5 months, I'm not quite there where I can approximate that, looking at everybody. Oh, something to add, that I didn't, as you can see, if a classmate volunteers to take notes for a classmate in your class of the Zoom lectures, you can connect them with us in DSPS, and we can actually pay them for their trouble, $50 at the end of the semester. Okay. All right. So any questions about that? I don't see any. All right. So if you wanted to advance to the next slide, test accommodations. Okay, so this got a little bit tricky in spring and summer for some students and some classes. I would encourage you, if you have an issue with a student, either with extra time, how they're able to access your exams and quizzes, talk to the student, and please always feel welcome to reach out to any of us in DSPS. We are more than happy to try to troubleshoot and facilitate. Even if the tests are online, the student still gets their extra time. So that is how it needs to go. Just because the content may be online doesn't mean a student with a reading disability can read any faster. A lot of instructors are concerned about cheating, as well you should be, and the sanctity of your test, and that. So we want to make sure that is not, that's super important. But it has to be worked out to make sure that the student also has kind of the sanctity of their accommodation respected as well. We really are pushing the message to students to really communicate with you. We really are encouraging you to reach out to us if there's an issue in any of your classes. For students who need alternate formats, so even in the online environment, there can be students who may need to use large print or Braille, screen reader, e-text. We are letting the students know that we need at least a 5-day lead to make sure that we can get their tests in that alternate format for them. Some students on campus may have used a reader or a scribe. That's someone who would read the test to them or write the answers for them by dictation. That, of course, may still be available to them. We're really pushing the message that students need to do that 1 week in advance, and we would want to work with you to have that test, make sure it's available in a format that they need, or that we have it so that we can, in fact, proctor the test. So that's an interesting thing we didn't necessarily expect with this remote, but we are, in fact, in some specific situations, still proctoring exams. If you think about a student has an accommodation to take their test in DSPS, so that's outside of that stressful classroom environment. So some instructors, and it makes sense, we're doing Zoom tests. So just like all of you would have to be, face forward to the camera while you're taking the exam, everybody can see the whole class. That is just like the classroom environment. So we found some students we did need to kind of help and proctor them because that was an uncomfortable situation for them. So like I said, as we learned in spring and summer, things come up we don't anticipate, but we work with you and we work with the students and we figure it out to best respect your course and what you're teaching and the sanctity of your tests, and to respect the student and their accommodations. So Any questions about test accommodations? Maybe examples of how it went for you, ways that you've maybe changed how you assess students in your classes with the remote, how you've done the exams or quizzes online?
I'm going to stop sharing so we can have some time to hear from other folks. Okay, hi everyone again. I want to stop sharing just so I can see everyone's faces, and thank you, Teresa, for going over that, which some of you are familiar, but we've got some new faces, so I'm really open to hear for Scott, Teresa, and I can answer any questions. We'd love to hear what you're doing.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
So normally we're not supposed to out students for having DSPS accommodation. So I think, well, I guess like for as far as extra time on tests, would it just be, I think like the way I've handled it was that like, the student would either come in early or just end up staying later for the test. So I don't think that was that big of a deal. Same thing with the online, I guess. Like, would it just be that we should just keep that same mantra? Like, they'll just stay in the Zoom call, and we'll just tell everyone to get out.
So you're doing Zoom exams? You're not putting the exam on Canvas, because Canvas is a really fast way to do it. You extend the time.
I'll about the exam with them.
Yeah, and Luke, what do you teach?
Math. It's going to be
math.
Math 25.
I think what I might recommend is when the student maybe provides you with a letter of accommodation, email them back or offer, to do a little Zoom chat with them and say, this is how I'm envisioning the test to go. Does that seem like that could work for you?
Okay.
And I suspect most students will be like, yeah, maybe they can jump in the Zoom early and start the test. Then the rest of the class joins and nobody would really notice, or like you said, stay a little bit later so you're removing everybody else. The other students would never know, right, that one student didn't get removed. Yeah, so just, collaborate with the student and say, this is what I'm envisioning. How does that work for you?
Okay.
And Luke, one of the good things on the Zoom is that you're going to obviously start the students all together, perhaps, let's say, and they have any questions. When they're in there with you, I don't know how you're dealing with questions, because I remember taking math, and if something wasn't clear, you could go up to the instructor and say, I'm not really sure what you're trying to do here. I don't know how you guys are doing that on Zoom. But I guess what I'm saying is if they stay later, they might even have those opportunities, right, to ask questions. Because I think when they used to come to our DSP office, they didn't have access to a faculty. So right now with Zoom, they're really getting access to a faculty that they in the past would come into the DSP center with extra time and they couldn't ask. So I think that's a positive, and that you're with them.
Okay, sounds good.
We have a question from chat. Although not DSPS specific, what are some best practices for preventing cheating on Canvas exams? So anyone who maybe typically gives Canvas exams have something that they're using already or they found feels comfortable to them?
Well, last semester, spring, I did a Zoom exam, and so I had a student, and so he gets double time. So basically, I have to stay. I did contact DSPS, and then DSPS did arrange to have another person to come at the end of my test to take over to proctor that one person. But then it ended up with that person didn't need that extra time the first on one test, and then another test he did need the full extra hour, and which I stayed with him. I think it's just hassle, and also I didn't know whether he's going to need another person or not, so I didn't bother for the later on. But so I did stay with him. I mean, if you have a few students like that, maybe worth that extra time, but it's still, it's hard. For example, if the final exam, if it's 2 hours and then you have to go like 4 hours, I think that's too much for instructor. Yeah, but I'm changing the test to Canvas or to the Proctorial. Yeah, this time. But still, I mean, students could cheat even in Proctorial oral Canvas because they get so much time extra, and so they could be, you know, doing some communication with people who are down with the test.
Right. Well, but that could be happening for students who don't get extra time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's not the, I don't know that it's the extra time that gives someone the access to outside communication because they're all at home, they're all on their computers. So I think the potential for that exists, you know, regardless of the extra time. When students receive extra time, it's typically based on a limitation where there's slower processing. So that's kind of what it's based on. Does anyone have, I mean, are you guys doing anything just for that in general? Is it the Zoom you're just sort of watching to see if that they're not picking up their phones, or?
I'm just gonna tell my students basically to move their camera around, just see no one's in the room, put all your devices somewhere visible so that, and out of the way. And then like, if you just need to leave, like show that your devices are, actually, I'm not even allowed bathroom breaks. I don't know, they can do whatever.
Yes.
But basically, don't take your phone or watch with you into the bathroom, and try not to be too long.
Right.
Yes.
What else can you do? I mean,
Yeah,
someone's
students might
someone's
take a
gonna
break.
do it, or they're gonna be honest.
Right.
That's two options.
Yeah.
If I could pipe into
Yes.
Teresa, so this is Vera Alino. So I did my summer class, and it's actually a very stressful, but at the same time, I'm thankful that I did a summer class because it kind of showed me what to expect fully now that everything's all online. So basically, what I usually do for DSPS is, again, give them extra time. But what I find that works for me is to give it to them, give them access ahead of the class instead of later. Let them stay later. This will allow me not to, like, there's any communications whatsoever, because when they're taking the exam on Canvas, some of the A students will see their score. Oh, I perfected the exam. I'm going to share my answers. So if I would give them the time earlier, then they would hopefully finish at the same time with the rest of the class. Another thing that was really, really, well, it kind of made me so sad after hearing about this, because I did share it. Another professor is also doing a summer class, and he shared it to me afterwards, was that I pretty much gave them extended time anyway, pretty much everybody across the board, and then the extra 1.5 times for the DSPS student. And so what I did for the Canvas exam is that I did not lock the questions, so that they can basically go back to question 1 if they have any troubles with, or skip the questions, and then just go back to the previous question. So what another instructor told me is not to do that, because what that does is that they would screen capture the first question that they have trouble, or any question that they have trouble with. They will upload it to this website called Chegg, who has a 24/7 online tutoring. And then they can proceed to the other questions and then answer those while waiting for the tutor to give them the answer. And so if you lock the question, which actually I hate at the same time, because then by locking it, you're forced to really move to the next question. By locking it, it makes them not wait for the tutor. So they are forced to answer that question and move on, because time is of an essence.
Right.
And so I'm going to give them ample time, extra time, but then I'm going to lock the questions.
Yeah. Are you letting them know that in advance? And I just ask because one, this is all just so hard. Two, you know, it seems like where there's a will, there's a way. you know, for students who are, you know, going to cheat. But the reason I ask if you're letting them know in advance is because to skip questions is a test taking strategy we teach students a lot.
Right, exactly. And I like, and yeah, exactly. So I'm really going back and forth on this one. It's like a dilemma. There's really no black and white on this thing, because that's what I did. Initially, I just post all the questions so that they can see it all 40 of them. And then I started to like, okay, I'm just going to show it one question at a time, but you can always go back and forth. And then there's a thing that's being mentioned to me at the after the summer, when we are trying to evaluate how well or assess how well we did, or what works for us or what didn't. And that is a possibility. Here's the thing: I did the exam on Canvas, but I made them go to Zoom so that I can see their faces. And part of the exams are in the exam is like calculations. I noticed that majority of the students don't even go down and plug. You can see them doing their calculations because they will be getting their calculators off and then plugging in their data. But I noticed that all their faces are just on the screen at all times. Some of them, not all of them. So that is an indicator that they're just waiting for someone or however to answer the questions for them. And it's, well, Canvas has a feature wherein you can activate it. It's on navigation. It takes a while to dig it up, but there's a feature there wherein you can actually see students coming out of Canvas and going to another external site and coming back. I don't use Proctorio, that's the thing. And I might want to, because I heard success stories in Folsom Lake, our sister company, college, that they did well with Proctorio. So maybe that would solve everything, but then again, students can, there's always a will. There's no will, there's a way.
Well, and I'm thinking, so I need to look at strategies for newer test strategies, right? So if the questions are going to be locked, how can I help students prepare for that and manage anxiety and stress, you know, and that. So that's, you know, that's something we can do. And it helps us with these conversations to kind of have an idea of what they might be experiencing and adjust how we can support them. Eddie had a question. Have any of you had students without cameras? Has that been an issue? Marcus?
Yeah, so I actually verify ID to make sure the person whose name is on the roster who is going to get the grade is the person that's taken the exam. And sometimes that's you know, students say, you know, I've had everything from phone being under repair to, so just, okay, send me at least a, you know, I try as much as possible. Send me a picture of your, you know, of your ID or whatever, and do it that way from somebody. So even if you don't have it during the actual exam, it is concerning. If we don't have academic integrity, we're nothing. So as much as we're trying to help folks, if our degrees and our class completions can't account for that student actually did that kind of work with only the required assistance. So it's an extremely important topic to me. But yeah, you know, these days I have had to bend a little bit. I used to have my students come into campus and proctor the exams, even for my online classes. But my strategy of dealing with it, besides pictures, has been to just alternate the tests a little bit and exam changes that rely more on in-classroom work rather than just whatever else may have been out there. It's to me almost a feeble attempt, but again, if we don't enforce it in one way or another, then our degrees and grades are worthless.
Right.
I wanted to chime in a little bit on that Proctorio Alina mentioned. They have across the state, lots of other DSP officers are talking about Proctorio and some of the equity issues it brings about, right? Because it shuts down the computer and some of our students need access to some technologies. So I think it's, if you could just be mindful of when you use it. And of course, there's other concerns with Proctorio that I don't have the whole list, but there's multiple things that they have found. And I don't think Patrick's in here anymore, but maybe he could, I was gonna ask him to share, but they are discouraging Proctario if you don't have to use it. But I think it's a tool that's available. Any other things? Maybe
Could I chime
yeah.
in?
Yeah.
I haven't used Proctorio, but I've been playing around with it a lot over the summer. And there's a lot of features you can just disable so it doesn't lock things out. You can have various levels of control. And so it doesn't have to be just shut everything down. You can adjust it. And so that might be one way to compensate for that sort of problem.
Okay.
Also, Proctorio is sort of nice because it's even if you don't use it for anything except to monitor, it can be sort of a deterrent for the calling, because you can say you monitor them. That is my biggest problem over the last semester, was people calling each other. I knew they were doing it because they're spitting out the same absurd answers that were word for word the same on the test. And and I had a problem with that because I didn't do Zoom. I'm doing asynchronous to the greatest ability I can because of scheduling and how hard it is to in my house. I'm right now sharing an office with my son who's in class the most. So it's really hard to try to do stuff like this in person at a fixed time. So I give them a 12-hour window to do exams. I set it up in Canvas, and I like the time management part of Canvas where you can just add time to whoever has it. I try to stay around on email for the questions that might come up. Usually it's a problem with they can't see a picture or something. And then I just make notes of that, so then I can go back and try to give them time, or else I'll just adjust the test. It's more laborious, but I always encourage my DSPS students to stay in my class so they could ask the questions, because it is hugely important to ask me clarification questions. And when they go to DSPS, assuming they even can with the scheduling, it hurts them on the grand scheme of things. And so I usually did my exams in my lab period, so they'd have the 2 times anyway. At least that would be available for them. But I haven't figured out a good way to do the feedback or clarification questions yet for any of my students, not just the DSPS ones. But anyway, I'm trying to figure this out too.
Thank you, Eli, for sharing. Lab's another thing, if anyone wants to share how they're doing lab or anything else and how that's working for them.
Lab's a giant mess.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's all I can say.
Yeah, you know, all of us are trying to adjust, right? And the working from home and how to all do this, like Marcus said, with integrity and respect and keeping our standards. And it is just such a challenge. I think we have about 10 minutes left, and you know, I guess what we are hoping we could do with this Flex as well is just let you all know that you're not alone in having to figure this out. Maybe we don't have exactly the answer, but we will work with you to connect with the answers or to troubleshoot. We want to make sure you're supported. We want to make sure the students are supported. And I think, you know, it's never a bad idea to just let you be aware of that, and encourage you guys to reach out to us, and we will try the best we can. Has anybody found, I'm trying to think anything else we can discuss, or in terms of best practices or things that you learned, as I know someone else was sharing earlier, what didn't work over the summer, but maybe something that did work, that maybe even a little bit out of the box to kind of share with the group. And it could be tests, accommodations, just maybe how you shifted an exam or how you taught a little bit differently.
I mean, I think it just depends too, like if you don't have a classroom that has a lot of students with accommodations, but I think that was helpful when I had like 1 or 2 that I would just ask them to meet up with me once a week, or like every other week. So that way we can like see how's it going, what are some things that are working, what are some things that are not working, what are you worried about, and just kind of like catch up. Like, I think that helped the student out a little bit, or just kind of gave them a little less anxiety in the class. So I don't know. That might just be a little thing, but again, harder to do when you have a lot of classes, harder to do when you have a lot of students in one class. So
I just want to share too that I know many of you on your Canvas sites are you know, putting things about DSPS or even other services like academic supports, you know, we do refer our students over to tutoring. If you find that they're struggling, we can connect them, and our students get extra time in the tutor center. Tutoring right now is being done remotely. They have students and other academic professionals like IAs and so forth working in the math center, reading center, and tutor centers and all the labs. And our students do get extra time. So feel free to, if they don't understand that, they do get extra time being DSPS. So that's nice.
And then did all of you see the email from Raina regarding adding on your Canvas pages? There's a button or a publish you can do to give students a direct link to tutoring.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be helpful to give that that blurb from her on the email we're going to send to you, just a reminder to kind of push that on your Canvas? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was recommending, it's called online tutoring. It's on, you need to put it up there so students have it. And of course, someone mentioned, oh, during testing, you want to take it off. I don't know what that means. Maybe they could go to a tutor. But she's very aware that students might want to ask questions during an exam. She really wants to collaborate with faculty so that they don't, their student, you know, they're aware of those situations in a particular exam. I also wanted to mention earlier about finals. I know finals, you tend to have larger exams, or maybe you're changing it now that you're online. Are you guys still implementing 2-hour finals? Did you find you did that, or you changed it? I know the spring was very different. I'm wondering if this fall you're anticipating a 2-hour final. No?
No.
If you ever find an overlap in finals or something, we did help some faculty in the spring who had back-to-back finals with extended time. We did help a few faculty. But we have not, that's one area that we have kind of not been too involved in now that everyone's going online. And I was just curious if you had feedback on how you plan to in your semester, if you're anticipating needing our services. Okay. So like Teresa said, if you guys need anything, please reach out to us. If you want some, just throw out some ideas on testing, maybe how you can maybe break up a test. We do have new students. I'm amazed all the new students, Jeff Hardy, hearing you might have in your classes this semester. People totally blind who tend to have a longer time in testing. So anytime a scenario comes in, you want to run it by me or any of my peers, we'll be happy to do that. So I was going to share very quickly our hours again. Let me see if I can go back to our presentation.
Oh, and I also, because I think with the hours you'll have from this PowerPoint also our link. And, you know, hopefully your syllabus has a statement about our program. And we really are trying to get the word out. Something we noticed is a lot of students just assumed that all support services on campus, because we weren't on campus, were unavailable. And we've done a lot of messaging, or tried to do a lot of messaging, but we still see that that message isn't successfully really getting to everyone. So, you know, if we could ask if you have time or could put something on your Canvas page, just let students know that even if they can't conceive, how would I possibly get that sort of help in this remote environment? Let them know that pretty much everything that was available on campus is still available, just in this different way.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah. So this is our final slide. Like I said, these first two here, our website and our number, you definitely want to put that on your syllabus and remove BS 105 because we're not on campus, and students did show up in the spring to campus thinking we were still there. And this is the email that lots of information goes to, and we're still open 8 to 4:30, and we have a student lounge where students can drop in every day from 2 to 3, and there's always 1 or 2 people from DSP to help them. So that's a drop-in time. If there's a conflict with that time, of course, all of us, including Teresa, Scott, myself, we're all responding to our campus phone numbers so that we can respond to you. If you have questions, you can look us up in the directory. Okay, and then here's our email. So let me know. I'm curious too to know if folks would like any samples of the disability statement as you wrap up. I can probably get that to you at the today or tomorrow, but I know you're already probably posted things. So if you need anything from us, please let us know. And thank you for joining us today.